You cannot control the world. You can control your response to it. That distinction is the beginning of discipline. This is Umbral Audio. Meditations. Marcus Aurelius. Book 1. A record of gratitude. Listen slowly and let the mind settle. From my grandfather, Varus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. From the reputation and remembrance of my father, modesty and a manly character. From my mother, piety and beneficence and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts. And further, simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. From my great-grandfather, not to have frequented public schools, and to have had good teachers at home, and to know that on such things a man should spend liberally. From my tutor, not to side with the green or the blue faction at the games in the circus, nor with the light or heavy-armed gladiators, and to endure labor, and to want little, and to work with my own hands, and not to meddle with other people's affairs, and not to be ready to listen to slander. From Dionysus, not to busy myself about trifling things, and not to give credit to what was said by miracle workers and jugglers about incantations and the driving away of demons and such things, and not to breed quails for fighting, nor to give myself up passionately to such things, and to endure freedom of speech, and to have become intimate with philosophy, and to have been a hearer first of Bacchius, then of Tandisus and Marcianus, and to have written dialogues in my youth, and to have desired a plank bed and skin, and whatever else of the kind belongs to the Grecian discipline. From Rusticus, I received the impression that my character required improvement and discipline, and from him I learned not to be led astray to sophistic emulation, nor to writing on speculative matters, nor to delivering little oratory speeches, nor to showing myself off as a man who practices much discipline, or does benevolent acts in order to make a display, and to abstain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing, and not to walk about in the house in my outdoor dress, nor to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity, like the letter that Rusticus wrote from Sinussa to my mother. And with respect to those who have offended me by words or done me wrong, to be easily disposed, to be pacified and reconciled as soon as they have shown a readiness to be reconciled, and to read carefully, and not to be satisfied with superficial understanding of a book, nor hastily to give my assent to those who talk overmuch. And I am indebted to him for being acquainted with the discourses of Epictetus, which he communicated to me out of his own collection. From Apollonius, I learned freedom of will and an undeviating steadiness of purpose, and to look to nothing else, not even for a moment, except to reason, and to be always the same. In sharp pains, on the occasion of the loss of a child, and in long illness, and to see clearly in a living example that the same man can be both most resolute and yielding, and not peevish in giving his instruction. And to have had before my eyes a man who clearly considered his experience and his skill in expounding philosophical principles as the smallest of his merits. And from him I learned how to receive from friends what are esteemed favors, without being either humbled by them or letting them pass unnoticed. From Sextus, a benevolent disposition, and the example of a family governed in a fatherly manner, and the idea of living comfortably to nature, and gravity without affection, and to look carefully after the interest of friends, and to tolerate ignorant persons, and those who form opinions without consideration, and to be ready to yield in matters where others have strong opinions, and to give way without envy. And from him I learned to be mild and conciliatory in the expression of opinions, and not to be dogmatic, and to abstain from fault-finding, and to show no sign of anger or other passion, but to be free from passion, yet full of affection, and to praise without noise, and to possess much knowledge without ostentation. From Alexander the grammarian, to refrain from fault-finding, and not in a reproachful way, to chide those who have uttered any barbarous or solecistic or strange-sounding expression, but dexterously to introduce the very expression which ought to have been used, by some other fit suggestion. From Fronto, I learned to observe what envy and duplicity and hypocrisy are in a tyrant, and that generally those among us who are called patricians are rather deficient in paternal affection. From Alexander the Platonic, not frequently nor without necessity to say to anyone, or to write in a letter, that I have no leisure, nor continually to excuse the neglect of duties required by our relation to those with whom we live, by alleging urgent occupations. From Catullus, not to be indifferent when a friend finds fault, even if he should find fault without reason, but to try to restore him to his usual disposition, and to be ready to speak well of teachers, as it is reported of Domitus and Athenodotus, and to love my children truly. From my brother Severus, to love my kin, and to love truth, and to love justice. And through him I learned to know Thrasea, Helvidius, Cato, Dion, and Brutus. And from him I received the idea of a polity, in which there is the same law for all, a polity administered with regard to equal rights and equal freedoms of speech, and the idea of a kingly government, which respects most of all the freedom of the governed. From Maximus I learned self-government, and not to be led aside by anything, and cheerfulness in all circumstances, as well as in illness, and a just admixture in the moral character of sweetness and dignity, and to do what was set before me without complaining, and to have no man think that he had heard or saw anything when I was not present, and not to be in a hurry, and to listen patiently, and to be firm and not unstable, and to show no anger, and to be free from deceit, and to have a good disposition, and to be kind, and to avoid all falsehood, and to appear like a man who could not be angered, but could be persuaded. From my father, I observed mildness of temper, an unchanged resolution in the things which he had determined after due deliberation, and no vainglory in those things which men call honors, and a love of labor and perseverance, and a readiness to listen to those who had anything to propose for the common good, an undeviating firmness in giving to every man according to his deserts, and a knowledge derived from experience of the occasions for vigorous action and for remission. From the gods, I learned that I had good grandfathers, good parents, a good sister, good teachers, good associates, good kinsmen and friends, nearly everything good, and that I never touched any of them with any offense, though I had it in my power to do so, and that I was never brought into such circumstances as to do anything disgraceful, and that I was not longer brought up with my grandfather's concubine, and that I persevered the flower of my youth, and that I did not make proof of my manhood before the proper season, and that I was subjected to a ruler and a father who was able to take away from me all pride, and to persuade me that it was possible for a man to live in a palace without wanting either guards, or embroidered dresses, or torches, or statues, and such things, but that it is in such a man's power to bring himself very near to the fashion of a private person, without being for this reason either meaner in thought, or more remiss in action, with respect to the things which must be done for the public interest, in a manner that befits a ruler, and that I had good teachers, who showed me by their example that a man ought to take care of his character, and that I had no desire for boys or women, and that I was not led astray by idle curiosity, and that I was not addicted to reading many books, and that I was not curious about trifling things, and that I was content with little, and that I bore illness patiently, and that I had a body capable of enduring much labor, and that I was not given to anger, and that I was not fond of listening to slander, and that I was not superstitious, and that I did not practice astrology, and that I was not easily deceived by appearances, and that I had a good disposition, and that I loved truth, and that I was not proud, and that I was not suspicious, and that I was not given to ostentation, and that I was not vain, and that I was not disposed to quarrel, and that I was not eager for novelty, and that I was not disposed to be angry, and that I was not avaricious, and that I did not seek pleasure as an end, and that I was not fond of bodily indulgence, and that I was not given to excess, and that I was not idle, and that I was not negligent of duty, and that I was not unwilling to listen to advice, and that I did not think much of myself, and that I did not despise others, and that I was not malicious, and that I was not hypocritical, and that I was not given to idle talk, and that I did not waste time in trifles, and that I was not inattentive to my own faults, and that I did not neglect the common good. Discipline begins with memory. Continue with Book 2. You are listening to Umbral Audio.